good evening, and welcome. It is time once again for the CU Immigration Forum, a.k.a. Radio Triple R, here on WRFU LP, Urbana, 104.5 FM. I will be your host for this evening. My name is Mr. Garza, and I'm here to let you know that WRFU is an open forum for the Urbana-Champaign community. I would like you to understand that views expressed are those of the speakers and are not intended to represent WRFU, UC, IMC, or the Urbana Socialist Forum, or, as we like to say on this show, UPTV, because we are also, I'm waving to the camera, on television. These views are our own, and by our in this instance, I mean myself and my charming guests who are just about to introduce themselves. You may want to actually hold that microphone or something, because pretend it's like karaoke or something and you're like a pop star. Yeah. Tell us who you are and why you are. Who and why you are, or something like that.
Sure. Well, my name's Alana Miller. I'm a student in urban planning at the University of Illinois.
Uh-huh.
And do you want to...
My name is Zeqiang. I'm also an urban planning student in University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana.
And we're here with a class project. We're here to talk about something that we're doing in our senior workshop class, which is about community development. And the project that our whole class is focusing on is immigrant-owned businesses in Urbana. So our group specifically is focused on the downtown area of Urbana and what type of businesses are owned and run by immigrants.
How does that work with urban planning? I mean, what about, is that something an urban planner would do? Let's say if your job was to be an urban planner, would you be doing this sort of thing?
I'd say that urban planning has a lot of different aspects, a lot of different types of facets that it, you can be a city planner, you can be someone who, chooses where the sidewalks go and the zoning board and things like that. You can be a commissioner, a board member or something. And then there's also community development. So that's the focus that we have each decided to take within our classes. So community development, it's really about economic development, businesses, how the residents interact with the businesses in Urbana, and specifically, big box versus locally owned, things like that. So that's why it's definitely intertwined with community development as well as urban planning as a whole.
Okay. So here we get into the question, what is community? What is a community? Are you talking about a geographical space? People who live within this area are a community, or people with shared interests in whatever, or what? How are you defining community?
I think that's a great question. Everyone has a different idea of what community means to them, but specifically, I think what I've learned in my 4 years in the urban planning department is that a community can be whatever you make of it. So a geographical space makes it easy to call that a community, but I, personally feel that community is based off of a feeling and a type of connection that people have with one another. So that can be geographical. It can also be, emotional or physical or, mental. Any type of connection between more than a few people can become a community if they so choose. So I think it's in the broader sense of the word, but in this case, we're definitely talking about the businesses and immigrant community within the city of Urbana.
Okay. Because it seems like, depending on how you defined it, you would emphasize different aspects of what you were doing in order to address that constituency, I guess you might say, or something like that. I don't know. So community development, and that means figuring out what people in this area or this group or however need, and in this instance, you're looking into immigrant-owned businesses?
Yeah. Well, basically, what our project is aimed to do is that our client, or you can say, is the city of Urbana. Okay. What we want to do is focus in our group specifically on the downtown area and say, how are the immigrant-owned, the immigrant business owners, how are they interacting with each other? How are they interacting with the city? How are they interacting with their customers in order to be the most successful? Because the goal is for Urbana to grow and to thrive and to have, an amazing economic environment so that more people can come to Urbana and survive and thrive entrepreneurially, here in this great town. So what what are they doing right? What are we doing wrong? How are, what's happening basically? That's our project. So it's we're looking right now, we're still in the beginning phases of identifying these businesses, thinking about, are there language barriers? Are there, bureaucratic things that are keeping people from being involved in the community, and how can we help facilitate some changes or make suggestions to the city in order to, kind of help them get the ball rolling.
So is it going to be qualitative, quantitative, a little bit of both, just whatever you feel like at any given moment, or have you laid out the parameters of what you're going to do? Like, we're going to ask these questions and we're going to get these statistics, or how exactly are you going to do this? Just talk to people and kind of get a feel, is it very subjective, objective?
I'm not sure it's objective or subjective, but right now we already prepared to have some interview with the owner of the business owner, and we already prepare our survey questions to ask them about how they feel doing business in Urbana, what's their problem, when they starting business, why they choose Urbana, or how how's their doing right now. Their business is popular or so, or just and what's their plan for future, such like that. Yeah.
So it's definitely a mixture of qualitative and quantitative data. We have to we don't want to ask them, when did you come to Urbana and where's your green card, because that's not what we're interested in. We're interested in how they're interacting with the community. So getting some of that evidence that we can kind of hold on to, numbers, is definitely important, but also what we think is even more important is how are they, how do they feel about being an immigrant in Urbana and about being an entrepreneur in Urbana, because those types of and their stories also of coming and starting their business, maybe having a business in their home country and moving it here, or have been growing up here since they were little. Those are the stories that are going to give us the most information in order to say what's going right and what's going wrong. So we need both types of data in order to kind of make a comprehensive report at the end of our semester.
So you're going, how are you defining immigrant?
Yeah, that's also a question our class has kind of gone back and forth with. We're really not putting any parameters on it. So whether you've come here when you were 3 years old and you grew up with being a first-generation citizen, or if you had moved here 6 months ago, we have immigrant business owners kind of all across the board. So we're not, I don't think we're specifying who is and is not an immigrant.
That's to me. Well, but you mean from a different country, is
right.
Your country of origin, of birth, your birth, how would you put that? The country you were born in is something other than the United States, but beyond that, you're not laying down any.
That's correct.
Because one thing that on this show, we talk a lot about immigration, obviously. CU Immigration is our name. And so I've gone over this topic a lot in trying to define what is it that makes people so anti-immigrant a lot of the time. Why are some people so oh, you're from somewhere else, therefore you're not good? And so I've tried to do the mental exercise, what is different if you were born in, say, France, or you were born in Pennsylvania. You're still coming here from somewhere else. You're still taking somebody's job, presumably someone who from here is not doing this job because you, this outsider from somewhere else, came. You know what I mean? It's I don't get how there's this huge distinction. There's a slight distinction. There might be a different culture. There might be different language. There might be different expectations for what you intend to do in the future. Like somebody from a different part of the United States might just be moving here and they're going to, live here for the rest of your life. Maybe somebody from Europe or Asia or whatever might just be coming here for a while to make some money and then go away. There may be some differences, or there may not. You may come from Pennsylvania because it's slow there and you want to make a bunch of money and go back and buy a farm. How is that? essentially, fundamentally different. So that's what makes me wonder about how you define immigrant, because a lot of people are immigrants. I mean, we're all immigrants in different ways. It's just some it's across national borders, some it's across state borders, some, So it's just an interesting question. Is that you're not going to allow for, like, say, if I came from Hawaii or, I mean, I have to be from a different nation state in order to be an immigrant in your thing?
Truthfully, that's not something we've discussed because, I mean, at least with the rest of my classmates, when we first hear, you're right, the term immigrant, we just assume it's from another country. And I think that's probably a stigma of the word immigrant and of immigration in general. But I do think you make a really good point, being that, I'm not from Champaign-Urbana, so technically, and this isn't my permanent home. So, so I think
You've
we're
got a
all
funny accent. You're bringing your strange ways here.
Right.
Trying to,
So that's just something that we haven't really discussed as a class, but it does bring an interesting point.
If someone's from Canada, you'll include them as an immigrant?
Yes.
Huh? Okay. Because Canada and the United States are sort of like Champaign and Urbana, really. I mean, if you think about it, they're like slightly different governments in Champaign, Urbana, very different ways of operating and taxing and views towards things like that. But basically, it's the same city with this buffer zone of the campus, which is, to my mind, a third city in between. It's like campus town, Urbana and Champaign. Right. But Canada and the U.S. are really, really similar.
Yes.
In so many ways, attitudes, culture, you name it. It just hardly seems fair to include like a Canadian immigrant and someone from Bangladesh. They have such completely different obstacles that they're dealing with. So I guess this is all a roundabout way of leading towards the question: how are you going to control for those differences? Like, let's say I come from some other country, I barely speak English. I'm going to say, well, everything here is in English. It's really hard for me to get along. And if I come from Canada, it might be, well, that exchange rate is weird between Canadian dollars and U.S. dollars. You know what I'm saying? It's like my perception of how things are or how they're going or how I'm being treated is going to be really different depending on my level of difficulty in just making the jump to this area, to Urbana, from wherever I came from.
Absolutely. I
Not
think
really a question.
Yeah, well, it is.
Sort of
It is a little
statement-
bit of a question.
Yeah.
We're looking for all different types of immigrant entrepreneurs, and I think that by focusing on their experiences and asking them what's easy, what's not easy, what their challenges are, and what their difficulties are, we can categorize. Okay, this social norm from this country isn't connecting with a social norm that we have here. How can we, tackle that issue? Because clearly there's a disconnect because it's not happening with immigrants from other countries. Similarly to the Canada example, their social norms, a lot of them are very, very similar to how we interact here. But, some bureaucratic, norms in other countries might be different, and that experience for each of those immigrants is different. And so by collecting their experiences and being able to analyze them further, then we can put those into a report, and we can say, this is the pattern that we've noticed. This, we can't say that it's true for everyone because obviously it's just a small percentage. We probably don't even know half of the immigrant entrepreneurs in Urbana, and we have this massive list. So hopefully we've got them all, but we won't be able to say for sure that these are specific trends because those types of things need large amounts of data. But from the data we are going to collect and are planning on receiving, hopefully that'll be able to give us a better insight and hopefully find not a solution, but more of a tool that we can use in order to ease those types of transitions, just to make it smoother for businesses to open in Urbana.
Are you going to produce some kind of document at the end of this that says that you turn over to the city of Urbana and say, here's what you can do, or here's some recommendations, or whatever?
We will be presenting our findings to the city of Urbana, I believe, at the end of the semester. I believe there's a presentation. So you're more than welcome to come.
I think that'd be very interesting. I'm interested in what you're going to come up with, because I'm just thinking of things off the top of my head that I could foresee as problems if you were to try to do something like this. Well, you are trying to do something like this, but like that, I would think, like, how would I go about covering for, this potential difference? Like, are you going to bring a translator along if there are language problems? How are you going to deal with all the different ways that you're going to have to interact with these people? Are you going singly or in groups, or?
Well, we're trying to go in groups, but also we want to work to our strengths. We're very lucky to have 2 group members that do speak other languages. And, do you want to?
Yes, I'm from China, and like you talk about the culture stuff. Like, I think the like language barrier and culture like conflict, maybe like their major problem. The business owner, like when they like come to US and started their business, like, so like culture stuff like may affect you thinking and doing things, and so that's what I feel like when I came to US. Like, and language, definitely. Yes, the language is a little bit like different when you learn it, and when you use it is like a little difference. So I got to like fit in, like try to fit in this like society, this culture. So that's it.
Yeah, see, that's a really interesting point. That raises some good questions, because I would think, language is going to be really a barrier anywhere. But in terms of dealing with strangers, I think everybody everywhere has a certain kind of arm's length way that they go about. Okay, you're different. I don't know you, so I'm reserved and you're reserved, and I'm kind of wait and see what you're like. But in business, would be an area where culture would just leap out. It's sort of like a business relationship is like any kind of relationship. So it's like saying, I'm going to go start dating somebody in this different country. That's a whole different thing than just, can I get along and go to the shops and get coffee every now and then? That's all that requires, is that you know what the money is worth and know the right questions to ask. But if you have an actual relationship, you're trying to like trust somebody, and that's where your culture comes into play. So I would think that would be a big hurdle for some people, bigger hurdle for some people than others, depending on how different. My analogy of Canada once again comes into play. Like, Canadian business culture is probably not that different from U.S. business culture, but Chinese business culture is really different from U.S. business culture. Like, how you go about establishing relationships, figuring out who to deal with and who not to deal with. And there are lots of countries that where bribes are the norm. That's just how you get stuff done. I know friends from Pakistan and India where it's just, you factor that into your cost. Everybody just does it. It's like, okay, well, you're going to have to pay a bribe. It's just there. Stuff like that. Like, so I guess I'm sort of thinking out loud. So pardon me, I don't have a clear question. My question is, how do you factor in the difficulty? I guess it's the same question I asked a minute ago, kind of rephrasing it. How do you control for the difficulty in cultural difference in business? Does that sort of make sense as a question?
I think it does. Our group actually was able to stop by the Urbana Business Association, and we talked with them a little bit, and they kind of brought this issue to our attention, that there's just some cultural disconnects that they hadn't been able to kind of jump over, and that was stopping them from getting resources to, some of these business owners. So what we thought was, if there was educational material, there was, pamphlets in other languages, if we conducted some of our interviews in their native language, would that make them feel more comfortable, more open into sharing their experiences, and how can we encourage that type of relationship rather than, a gap. So how can we bridge that? Because it's clearly a disconnect, and it's probably not going to go away, because and we don't necessarily want it to go away, because everyone's, their culture and their differences, and that's what makes them unique. And there's something very special about that, and that's actually also what we learned at the Urbana Business Association. It was just that they thrive off of their diversity, but they hadn't necessarily connected with that diversity. So, Urbana is such a special place, and it has so many immigrants from so many different places. And rather than being disconnected, we want to help them be able to bridge, the things that can connect each other. I don't know if that made sense, but
it made as much sense as my question, which was kind of the same as the question I asked before. I was just coming at it from a different direction, realizing there are more problems than I was even anticipating the first time around, in terms of, like, how do you decide what somebody's difficulties are in terms of, as an immigrant. Because we deal with this in the Immigration Forum quite a bit, in terms of, like, it's fairly easy for us to sit around and think of, okay, what do probably most immigrant people need in terms of services from a group like us? Well, they need help with citizenship if they're interested in that. They need help with legal stuff, finding good medical care. There's just some basic things. But when it comes to actually, like, connecting with them, where do we find them? I mean, that's solved in your case. You just go through the business directory.
Right.
You're finding them that way. But, where do you find them? How do you approach them on this? How do you get them to believe that you're somebody they should tell these things to? Like, I'm not sure if I were a business owner and you just came in and said, hey, I've got this class, and I'm like, I'd be like, yeah, whatever, okay. I don't know that I would necessarily feel inclined to just sit down and bare my soul and tell you all my problems. I might just be, oh, it's fine, it's okay.
Go away.
What do you want this for? Do you think they're going to trust you? I mean, how are you going to come across as trustworthy, I guess?
I hope so. I mean, our intent is rooted in, curiosity. And we only want to, uncover things that will, hopefully have a positive result in the future. Obviously we're not part of the government. We're not the police. We're not, at all in any way, shape, or form trying to get these business owners in trouble. But we do have to come at it with a sense of, they might not be able to trust us. They might, and they might not know, and that's okay. But we have to, be as sincere as possible and, explain to them why we are, asking all these prying questions. Because you're right. If someone just walked into my house and said, why are you doing this, and what's wrong, and da-da-da-da-da, I don't know that I would tell them. But, hopefully just being students and telling them up front about, our project and our class and what our goals are, in order to hopefully, make an impact on the business, environment in Urbana that they will be willing to share with us. But again, it's probably going to be a case-by-case basis. So that's why we have such a long list of businesses to try out, to hopefully get a few people to open up to us.
Is it kind of an unnerving prospect for you, like that first?
I don't know.
I mean, I don't know how I would begin that conversation. Like, do you have a minute? And it's like, I know as someone who I mean, I have an actual job beside this. Anytime anybody calls me up, and I can tell the minute they say, hi, how are you? I know it's a sales call. I just know it. And I'm like, look, if this is a sales call, I don't have time. Just leave me alone. I'm busy. There are certain, like, automatic things that just make you shut down when people do it, because you hear it all the time and you get used to, like, okay, this person wants something. They want my time. They want my money. They want something. I don't have any of those things. So leaving aside how you're going to get them to do it, how do you feel about asking them to do that? Is that like, are you like nervous, or are you just sort of like, oh, I'll just do it?
I think the business owner, like they pretty much like easygoing person. They are, and because they are like have to run the business to everybody, so they are like got to like to talk, like to interacting with other people. So like tomorrow I'm gonna like have a small interview with the owner of A Plus Club. So yes, I got him. I got his number through some network of my friends, and surprisingly, like he's a more like easygoing person than I think, and he would like to talk to me tomorrow. So, and
that should be interesting. Would this be, if you were doing this exact same project in China? Would it be a whole different process?
Yeah,
or would you do it the same way?
Because like China is not a immigrant country like US, so we don't have like too many like foreigners. Like just in my city, I mean, I'm from like a small city in China, so I'm not sure yet. But definitely like in like the big city like Shanghai, Beijing, like they got lots of like foreigners, and they open their business like restaurant or something, I don't know, but it's gonna be fine if I doing this project in China, back in China.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that'd be very different, because at least my friend from Japan, I was telling him before the show that I do a Japanese language radio program on Fridays here, and so the host of the show is actually in Japan. Oh, wow. She's a professor in Japan, and so we do it via Skype, and you know, where it's very complicated. This is my alarm telling me that our time is up. Anyway, we talk about the topic of immigration because it's something I'm interested in, and she says it's completely different over there. They don't encourage immigrants. There's this kind of, you know, you can come here and work and then you got to leave. Right. They don't. The whole English as a second language or Japanese as a, you know, doesn't exist there. It's like you're on your own. You come here, you have to figure it out yourself, because we're not going to help you. So anyway, I apologize. That went very quickly, but our time is up. I'd like to thank you again very much for coming to the show.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And I wish you a lot of luck with your project. I think it sounds like a very interesting thing, and I think it'll be fun. And I hope to be involved enough so that I can hear the end result of it and hear some of your war stories along the way. Like, oh, this one guy just kicked us out, and he took the dogs and sent them after us, and, you know, he wouldn't let us come in. You know, that kind of thing. Hopefully that won't happen. But if it does happen, I'd like to hear about it. Anyway, thank you so much for coming. It's been a real pleasure, and we'll talk again soon, I hope.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're at the halfway point here on CU Immigration. This is WRFU LP Urbana 104.5 FM, in case you were wondering. The clock on the wall has said 5 minutes till 7 for the last hour or so, and I can't stop myself from looking up at it, and I keep looking up at it thinking, oh my gosh, it's 5 till 7. I don't know why. So it's very strange. Anyway, as listeners to the actual live version of this show, you are no doubt aware that we have more than 2 guests here, and we're going to make a switch now. And our 2 guests who have been speaking are going to move and let 2 new guests come up, and we're going to start over and pretend we're starting the show all over again, because we are in fact starting the show all over again.